We're happy to be joined, very honored to be joined right now by Congressman Darin LaHood. And we're recording this, by the way, on Friday morning at the end of a very interesting week. So Mr. LaHood's going to have some great insights about this week and then about going forward with the Republican Party and Congress in general and some issues of importance to everyone. Little background, Darin LaHood, born and raised in Peoria, Illinois. And is now the congressman from the 18th District of Illinois, which is Peoria, Springfield, Jacksonville, Illinois. And Mr. LaHood was previously a Illinois state senator and a House member, and before that, a state and federal prosecutor. A wealth of experience, a tremendous member of the House Ways and Means Committee, the Select Committee on Intelligence, and the Joint Economic Committee. One other little personal note, Mr. LaHood has been very, very helpful and interested and focused on some issues of importance to us. When you look ahead then at the 3.5 trillion in your committee, the Ways and Means Committee, which is probably always called the most powerful committee in Congress. I think 70 or 80% of all laws go through your committee. And you mentioned the dismantling of the 2017 tax bill. What in that proposal that did pass out of the committee disturbs you the most, or is it hard to rank them?
Yeah. I mean, listen, we had 4 days of hearings with our chairman, Richie Neal, and went through all of it. But I mean, it's a monster bill, Jeff. I kind of look at it. If you go back to when we passed TCJA, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act 3 years ago, I mean, we really, changed and revised and reformed the federal tax code, which hadn't really been done at that level in close to 30 years. And it was a real work in progress. But really, the premise of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act was, how do we, first of all, bring a lot of money that's been parked overseas back to the United States by changing the global tax system? That's one thing. Secondly, when you talk to employers, whether you had 2 employees or 30 employees, or 500 or 5,000 employees. What did businesses want to see in the tax code? And so we focused on, if you bring down the business tax rate, for instance, we brought it down to 21%. The argument was, if you bring that down, companies will invest more in their businesses, buying new equipment, buying new products, adding on to the business. They'll hire more workers and they'll pay higher wages. And if you look at basically the 2.5 years of TCJA, pre-COVID, we had the best economy in my lifetime, Jeff, by every indication. You had people, we moved 6 million people out of poverty. So people at every economic level gained through that Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And then, by the way, we got rid of a lot of loopholes, a lot of tax provisions, a lot of special provisions that were been built up in the tax code by bringing down that rate. The argument was, bring down the rate, get rid of a lot of these loopholes, and let the economy take off. And that's really what happened. And so I look at, how do we get back to the economy we had pre-COVID? COVID was disruptive. It was challenging. We had to react, and we did. But now we got to get back to that. I think this reconciliation bill does just the opposite. Obviously, raising that business tax rate up to, whether it's 25, 27, 28%, I think will be detrimental. I also look at the tax on capital gains and making that retroactive and what that'll do. There had been talk about, changing how we tax 1031 like-kind exchanges. If there's any positive that came out of the bill, the fact that stepped up basis, which affects a lot of family-owned businesses, and also farming operations, which I have a lot in my district, that was kept out of the bill, at least for now. We'll see what happens in the Senate. So it's hard to find, again, a lot of positive things, particularly when you're really dismantling TCJA and trying to do away, and then raising taxes. The other point that I would make, Jeff, I think coming out of a pandemic, as I talk to employers and businesses and people, the last thing we ought to be doing is raising taxes coming out of a pandemic. But I think the Democrats see this as, this is their opportunity, with the small majority they have in the House and the real thin majority they have in the Senate, to try to change the direction of government.
We hear a lot about labor supply and staffing for, hospitality in particular, or, other types of businesses that can't get employees. What are your thoughts on that issue in general?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Jeff, it's a huge issue. You've seen the statistics. We have about 10.6 million unfilled jobs in the country today. And why are we having such trouble with labor shortage? I think it's a combination. We have so much money sloshing around in the economy right now because of all the money we spent on COVID. And listen, I proudly last year supported all 5 COVID bills. Because they helped with the health pandemic and also the economy, and we needed that. I obviously did not support the $2 trillion bill that passed earlier this year, just because I think we've spent way too much money in the economy, and obviously plussing up unemployment insurance. Jeff, I'm all for helping people that are down on their luck, whether you have a health issue, maybe you have a disability, but I think we spent way too much money on the unemployment insurance system. I've seen that in my own state where roughly, people were getting about $2,800 a month. And what happened is you're really disincentivizing work as you come out of the pandemic. And so as I travel around my district, you can't find truck drivers, you can't find welders, you can't find mechanics, you can't find anybody to work in a restaurant. And so you combine that with the supply chain issues, which are affected by lots of other issues related to our ports and getting products here. It's kind of a perfect storm that's created this labor shortage. And some have argued, Jeff, that once the unemployment benefits ran out, people would go back to work. But it hadn't really happened that way. And I think we've created habits now where people that are looking for jobs don't want to work a 10-hour shift or an 8-hour shift. People are looking to find a job where they can be home on Zoom, and maybe they take their kids to a soccer game or they're running chores at home. We've changed people's habits, and that's what worries me. And so I guess from a public policy standpoint, Jeff, and what we should or shouldn't be doing here, I don't think we should be putting more money into the economy. We need to let the free market system play out. Now, that may take 6 months to a year and a half to get our economy back on track, but it has been altered because of all this money sloshing around in the economy. And I think this 3.5 trillion just adds to that. And it's really a fundamental disagreement that we have with our Democrat colleagues.
Well, here comes some hardballs. Okay, high hard ones. We just had the congressional baseball game, so you're familiar with the high hard ones or the slow hard ones, I guess. So the Republican Party, you're the chair of the National Congressional Campaign Committee's finance department, which finances Republican candidates. Where do you see the Republican Party, and how do you feel about things? And do people ask you? I'm sure you get questioned about this when you're out talking to people. What's inside baseball? Can you share with us about the Republican Party, where you're going, where you want to go?
Yeah, thanks for that, Jeff. Yeah, I'm honored to be the finance chair for the National Republican Campaign Committee for this cycle. And our goal is to raise the necessary resources to take back the House. Just to give you a little snapshot, Jeff. So the first 6 months of the year in this role, the NRCC raised about $80 million first 6 months. To put that in comparison, in 2019, the last off-year cycle, the first 6 months in 19, we raised 44 million. So we've almost doubled that. So what's the reason for that? I think a couple things, Jeff. One is if you look at our freshman class that we brought in from 2020, everybody thought last year the House Republicans were going to lose 15 to 20 seats. We actually picked up 15 brand new seats. And you look at our freshman class, we elected people that don't traditionally look like the Republican Party. We elected 2 new Korean American women from Southern California, 2 new Hispanic members from South Miami. We elected 2 new women from Iowa. So record number of veterans and women and minorities. And so people that don't traditionally look like the Republican Party. And we really have some real superstars in our class. And so we've been promoting that. That's the first thing. The second thing is, Jeff, I think when people that are going to look at how do we bring balance back to government, what's the best bet? If you look at, again, building off our class last year, people have a lot of optimism in the House, particularly when you look at the Senate and the debacle that happened in Georgia and where the Senate's at now. I think there's a lot more optimism. Secondly, redistricting. Every 10 years, we do redistricting across the country. Redistricting is going to favor Republicans this time just because of the new seats. with the shift of people moving to the southern states, Texas gets 2 new seats, Florida gets a new seat, North Carolina gets a new seat, Montana gets a new seat. Those are all controlled by Republicans. So there's going to be a net gain of Republicans there. I think, again, people are excited about that. And then you've had some retirements, Jeff, with moderate Democrats leaving. There's one in my state, Sherry Bustos, moderate Democrat. She announced she's not running again, which was a big surprise. Ron Kind, great member of the Ways and Means Committee, Democrat from Wisconsin, again, in a tough district, decided he's not going to run. And so it's a combination of things, but we are, as we look at the next election in 2022, we've recruited right now 700 candidates. We have a candidate in every congressional district. But again, using that model from last election, picking people that aren't traditional Republicans, that are veterans, minorities, women, that reflect districts that we're going to compete in. And I feel good about where we're at. I think if the election was held tomorrow, Jeff, I think we'd pick up 20 to 30 seats. The problem is the election isn't tomorrow. And so in 13 months from now, we have to make sure that we keep our foot on the gas. We're not complacent. We stay focused on the issues. And listen, I think Joe Biden helps us every single day because, listen, I was at Biden's inauguration, Jeff, and you heard the speech there. It was very unifying, and we're going to come together and we're going to build this country back. And you look at, whether it's the Afghanistan crisis, whether it's the inflation crisis, whether it's the disaster on the southern border. I think people, again, when I hear from my constituents, I think they're frustrated that the country is not going in the direction that they thought it was.
Yeah, I won't really put you on the spot too much, but if we were live, I'm sure someone of our group would stand up and say something about, what about, you mentioned Biden, what about President Trump and the sort of the divisiveness that he brings. And if you'd like to comment on it, that's fine. But if you don't want to, I would totally understand that.
Yeah, listen, I think the farther we get away from the Trump administration, I think people are looking to the future. And that's really what we're doing at the NRCC, is looking at this next election. There isn't a presidential election in 2022, and the focus is winning back the House. So that's what we're focused on right now, and moving away and again, building off the success we had with our new members. And then also, Jeff, thinking about, again, when we take back the House, what are we going to do differently? What are we going to focus on for the American people? And that helps on the economy, that helps on foreign affairs, that helps in these different areas. And so that's really our focus, is laying out that narrative, that roadmap for when we take back the majority. And so that's what we're focused on, that, and less on what happened in the past and what happened with former President Trump, and more on the future.
Thank you for the open door that you've always had with us. And we look forward to working with you going forward, sir. Have a restful weekend, and we'll see you soon.
All right, Jeff. Hey, thanks so much. Always good to be with you, Jeff. Look forward to staying in touch. And yep, we'll see you soon.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks.